More often than not, horror sequels are downgraded ripoffs of the original, wear out what may have been a novel concept to begin with, or resort to extreme gore and jump scares to one-up their predecessor.
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck. No, come on, man. Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
That's true of most sequels, really, but it seems especially common in this genre. There are exceptions to every rule, however, and these sequels not only live up to their horrifying predecessors, they're even better. Evil Dead 2. Without the Evil Dead, we would have never been introduced to Ash and his cabin of horrors, so there's certainly something to be said for the merits of the movie that started it all. However, the requel, as Bruce Campbell calls it, was a lot campier and more self-aware, and as a result, more fun.
Groovy.
Instead of Ash coming in as the prototypical hero type, he became a lot more humorous and quirky. Sure, this meant the gore got dialed down a bit, but it also set a new tone for the series that was much cheekier and far more unique than the first. Evil Ash, groovy Ash, more mania. Evil Dead 2 cemented the series as a viable franchise, opening the door for movie 3, Army of Darkness, as well as a remake and the TV spin-off series Ash vs. Evil Dead. Bruce Campbell may have done other work in between all these Evil Dead installments, but he'll still be forever known for his demonic slaughtering skills.
Yeah, looking good. Looking sweet.
Friday the 13th Part 2. The first Friday the 13th certainly set a tone for what would become a sprawling series of slasher picks targeting teen counselors at Camp Crystal Lake.
The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
But its commitment to realism and having a villain who's a real person, rather than future franchise mainstay Jason Voorhees, meant it wasn't really all that different from any other entry in the teens running from psycho killer subgenre. The second movie, however, threw caution to the wind and resurrected Jason from his watery grave to do all the death dealing, and it totally paid off.
Yeah, here it comes.
Not only is Friday the 13th Part 2 eerie and well made, but the idea that Jason would be the one to take up his mother's torch and terrorize campers for the next few decades was solid and sustainable.
And he's hungry. Jason's out there.
Without this movie, Jason Voorhees wouldn't be such an icon of the horror genre, which is just plain unimaginable. The Devil's Rejects. Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses was a shockingly brutal parade of violence and mayhem, and produced some pretty unforgettable moments of violence that will haunt many nightmares forever.
Behold! Fish boy!
Oh my God!
But The Devil's Rejects came along and took its trio of nefarious murderers into more realistically terrifying territory. Baby Otis and Captain Spaulding are seen fleeing the police and tormenting anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves in their path.
You're not gonna kill us, are you?
Well, killing sounds so permanent.
The Devil's Rejects may have lost the atmospheric creepiness of the original, but it somehow managed to be even more disturbing since all these killings were done in plain sight. The depravity of these three was downright horrifying, and the fact that the movie was so packed with relatable victims made the dread that much more visceral than its predecessor.
What's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns?
Saw 2. Saw is a modern horror classic that introduced audiences to a game no one in their right mind would ever want to play.
I want to play a game.
With special focus on the two victims of the day, Saw presented Jigsaw in his philosophical death-dealing scheme and paid off with a twist ending that opened the dirty bathroom door to a whole franchise of gory traps.
Hello, Dr. Gordon. You are perhaps my greatest asset.
But where the first movie suffered from pacing issues due to its shoestring budget and tight set space, the second movie cleverly expanded the Jigsaw universe.
Oh, yes. There will be blood.
Not only did it present the film's first survivor, Amanda, as Jigsaw's protege, but it also committed to its puzzle dynamic and got even more creative with its terrifying traps.
Let the game begin.
Saw 2 was more exciting and interactive with the audience, and it offered much more insight into who Jigsaw was and what he wanted to accomplish.
By creating a legacy, by living a life worth remembering, you become immortal.
With the added layer of a bigger game in play for one of the detectives investigating Jigsaw's crimes, Saw 2 began to really flesh out the formula introduced by the first and offered a sustainable launchpad for the bevy of sequels to follow.
Game over.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare. A Nightmare on Elm Street's original concept, that a boogeyman who haunted dreams could actually kill a person in their sleep, was enough to make anyone afraid of bedtime.
This is God.
But once that storyline was beaten to death with a slew of progressively lame sequels, franchise mastermind Wes Craven decided to get a little more creative about how to amp up the intrigue. With Wes Craven's New Nightmare, he ventured outside of the box and pegged all the predecessors as the fictional movies that they were.
Doing a film about my nightmares as I'm dreaming them. In order for the movie to continue, it was dependent on me having more nightmares. Well, fortunately, I did.
Once his killer creation Freddy Krueger started bleeding into real life, though, his original stars had to play their old parts in an effort to stop the very evil he'd created with the original series. What resulted was a smart statement about the industry and his own place in it, and a film that was both self-aware and completely entertaining at the same time.
19. Never sleep.
Scream 2. Scream remains a central piece of 90s slasher history thanks to its quotable killer and fascination with its own genre.
You like scary movies?
And its sequel, Scream 2, took the property to new heights by focusing on what made the original so, well, original. The first installment followed a fairly standard formula about a masked killer offing high school students, but there was an element of satisfying self-awareness that set the movie apart. Scream 2 accentuated that aspect by introducing a movie within a movie storyline that winked at its own pop cultural relevance in a charming new way.
See, I've got my whole defense planned out. I'm gonna blame the movies.
While some of the kill scenes from the first film were a little more thrilling than anything that came after, the first sequel's subtle statements about itself were refreshingly on point.
It's showtime.
The Purge Anarchy. The Purge was laser-focused on a single family trying to survive America's annual night of government-sanctioned murder and mayhem.
Please just let us purge.
And while that was exciting enough to spawn a sequel, there was a lot of room to grow once the concept proved to be viable at the box office. Instead of just focusing again on a select few struggling to survive the night, The Purge Anarchy introduced some of the socioeconomic factors that would be an important part in creating such a system of disorder. While fans of the first film might have been left to wonder why and how the US stooped to allowing such chaos, Anarchy attempted to answer those questions. By putting its central players outside the comfort of their own homes, we got to see a lot more of the destruction and fallout from The Purge, and it was a lot more satisfying and informative.
Can't have heroes.
The parallels to the Occupy movement also set the stage for the third installment, The Purge Election Year. And the pick also left room for the forthcoming prequel series that'll delve into how society devolved in the first place. Dawn of the Dead. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead is a classic, no doubt about it. It marked the beginning of the zombie film craze and holds up as an esteemed chapter in his filmography.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
However, Dawn of the Dead, the second installment in his Living Dead series, expanded the first movie's ideas by showcasing the root cause of this epidemic.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
The film more narrowly pinpointed Romero's parallels between zombification and American consumerism by having its victims take cover in a shopping mall. And the film's juxtaposition of excess and materialism with hopelessness and violence helped define the zombie genre as a whole forever. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. When it comes to the Texas Chainsaw series, nothing has, or probably ever will, beat Tobe Hooper's 1974 original. When it comes to the modern reboots, though, there are some which were better than the others. After a series of Texas Chainsaw sequels that got progressively more ludicrous, 2003's reboot looked to return the franchise to its original form by having a group of unexpecting teens return to Leatherface's isolated abode.
What's wrong with you people?
Oh, my.
The pick benefited from modern cinematography and sound effects and one deliciously evil sheriff that made Leatherface seem like a teddy bear. However, it added very little to the story we already knew. Its sequel, The Beginning, however, did some digging as to why this cannibalistic family became what they were. The way their backstory developed was clever and included some of the franchise's best dialogue.
No talking until after I've said grace.
More importantly, the plot also paid more attention to its societal environment, namely the Vietnam War and the conscription that plagued a generation's youth.
You kids okay?
It still didn't transcend the original by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly bested the previous sequels and reboots in the series.
You blasphemous bitch! This is redemption, lady! That's what this is!
Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel, plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.